Kate loved David very much and could never imagine herself next to another man. They met 7 years ago and immediately felt attracted to each other. Kate and David's relationship developed so quickly and was so passionate that when they got married 6 months later, it didn't really surprise anyone. Having bought a small house outside the city, the couple started living together, and their family life was making them both very happy. Kate's father wanted to help the newlyweds, so he gave his son-in-law his old car, which he'd bought 15 years ago. David always dreamed of having his own car, so he was very happy with his father-in-law's gift. 9 months later, little Liam was born. He immediately became the center of the universe for his parents. The baby got sick often at first, which caused some anxiety for the young parents, but then the boy got better and everything fell into place. Liam was growing up as a smart boy who always made his parents proud. Meanwhile, Kate and David did everything to ensure that their son had everything he needed. It was especially important to David, who dreamed of getting rich before the kiddo turned 10. With that goal in mind, the young father was constantly going for high-paying jobs that could bring financial prosperity to his family. Since the couple lived in a small town located in northern Pennsylvania, David always saw moving to New York as his only chance of achieving his goal. The man dreamed of becoming successful in New York. It became his main goal in life. Therefore, David was determined to find his dream job in the metropolis. Kate understood that it would mean that she'd only get to see her husband on the weekends and was very upset by the impending separation. David, on the contrary, was very hopeful and could only think of New York. The man meticulously went through all the job ads in the newspaper and believed that one day he would find what he was looking for. But Kate, deep down, hoped that her husband would change his mind and stay home with the family. Thus, when David showed her an ad looking for construction workers in New York, the woman realized that it was a turning point in their family life. "Can you imagine? I could earn almost 3 times more than I get now," the man exclaimed, not even trying to hide his excitement. "Yes, of course, but money isn't everything. By and large, we already have everything we need," Kate noted carefully. But her words didn't make so much of an impression on David. The man got so excited that he pulled his wife in for a hug and then whirled her in an impromptu dance around the room. Since the ad said to come anytime, David decided to go to New York the very next day. Having packed up some basic things, the man said goodbye to his family and hit the road in his beat-up Chevrolet. Having looked after her husband's car as it drove away, Kate wiped away a tear and went back inside the house. There was no way for the woman to know that it was the last time she would ever see her husband. When he arrived in New York, the first thing David did was call his wife to let her know that he'd arrived and that he was going to get to work. "Good luck, dear. I'm proud of you. Take care of yourself," Kate said, trying to make her voice sound cheerful. She knew that David would only be able to come home a month later, so she was preparing herself for the long separation. The days seemed to be identical and dragged on painfully slow. Taking care of her 3-year-old son alone, Kate tried not to focus on the forced separation and only think about the good things in her life. Crossing out the days remaining until David's return on the calendar, the woman dreamed of the day that she would get to see her husband again. Finally, the day has come. Having worked for a month, David got 3 days off, which he was going to spend with his family. Kate decided to make a special dinner and cook her husband's favorite food, ribs in a spicy sauce and French fries. However, when there was about an hour left before David's arrival, the phone rang. Picking it up, Kate had no idea what she was about to hear. "Mrs. Robinson, I'm a traffic officer. Your husband was in a car accident. I'm sorry to inform you, but he didn't make it. Please accept my deepest condolences," someone's voice said rather casually. "What do you mean he didn't make it? He was on his way home," Kate exclaimed, still unable to believe the police officer. But the officer didn't go into details. He claimed to be very busy and said goodbye politely. Later, when Kate arrived at the police station, she found out that David had lost control of the car on a difficult section of the road and crashed it into a tree. The young man's car caught fire on impact and quickly burned to the ground. Unfortunately, David's body was so mutilated that it would be impossible for Kate to identify him, so the poor woman didn't find the strength to go to the morgue. For obvious reasons, the man had to be buried in a closed coffin, which shocked his friends and family. Kate took it all very hard. Her relatives had to call an ambulance twice during the funeral and the wake. It was hard for the woman to accept the fact that at the age of 26, she was already a widow and with a little son in her care. Kate couldn't help but feel that the door would open at any moment and David would come in with a bouquet of flowers and a beautiful smile on his face. Of course, nothing of the sort ever happened, and only the photograph in the black frame reminded the woman of her late husband. A few months passed. Kate was finally able to accept what had happened, but her little son Liam still kept asking his mother about his dad and when he would come home. Years flew by. During all those years, not a day passed that Kate didn't think of her late husband and didn't cry, looking at his photograph in the black frame. Cursing fate for its cruelty, the woman would have gladly given up everything she had to turn back time and stop David from going to New York, thus preventing him from dying in that car crash. Since Liam was already 6 years old, Kate allowed him to go outside on his own and play on the playground with his friends. On that warm June day, the boy took his ball and decided to play out on the front lawn. Knowing that her son was very well behaved and wouldn't go far from home, Kate didn't worry and got busy making dinner. About an hour later, the front door swung open and Liam ran into the house. He was very excited and screamed right from the door, "Mom, I was playing with Dad!" Kate shuddered and even dropped the knife she was using to cut the salad. At first, the woman thought that she had misheard her son, but when little Liam said it again, she felt uneasy. Is he imagining things? Or maybe he's running a fever or something, Kate thought, anxiously touching her son's forehead. But Liam seemed perfectly healthy, so the woman couldn't blame his confusion on him feeling unwell. "So where did you see your dad, honey? Do you think you could have made a mistake? It wouldn't be surprising since you haven't seen your dad in a long time," Kate asked carefully. To her surprise, Liam insisted that it was really his father and that he'd played ball with him on the playground for half an hour, after which he sat down on a bench to take a rest. "I think Dad is still here," Liam replied with a smile. Taking off her apron, Kate staggered to the door. She took a moment to gather her strength and went outside. At that moment, she was ready for anything, including coming face to face with the man who looked a lot like her late husband. But what Kate saw was simply shocking. There really was a man sitting on a bench in the front of the house. He looked exactly like David. Having come closer, the woman could hardly contain her emotions. "David, is that really you, honey? How is that possible?" Kate asked, dumbfounded. In fact, it really was David sitting on the bench. He looked at his wife with his gray, slightly sad eyes. There was a purple scar on the man's forehead, which was extremely difficult not to notice, especially for his wife. Having seen Kate, David got up from the bench and limped over. Only now did Kate realize that everything that was happening was real and not her dream. As it turned out, David was hurrying to get home on that fateful day when he saw a hitchhiker. The man was always very kind, so he couldn't just ignore someone he could help. Since it was a rather long drive, the stranger suggested that he could take the wheel so that David could rest for a bit. Tired after a hard shift, the man gladly accepted the hitchhiker's offer and immediately fell asleep, having gotten comfortable in the passenger seat. There was no way that David could have known that in half an hour the car would crash into a tree and the man sitting behind the wheel would die. David could barely remember anything that happened immediately after the accident. When he came to his senses, he was already in the house of an elderly couple living in the woods. It was the old Simpsons who gave David first aid when he got out of the blazing car, unable to understand what was happening, and wandered off into the forest. Margaret and Bob Simpson turned out to be adherents of a natural lifestyle, who who only believed in alternative medicine. Therefore, when David got to their house, he couldn't get any proper treatment because they didn't have any medicines at home. The wounded man spent several months being unconscious in the house of the hermit couple before he slowly began to recover. The situation was further complicated by the fact that David developed temporary amnesia caused by the head injury that he received in the accident. The worst thing was that 100 miles from that house, Kate was burying a man she thought was her beloved husband, but was actually a hitchhiker who died in the crash. David's memory was returning extremely slowly. The man literally had to collect the memories and images from his past bit by bit. The Simpsons were kind to the man and treated him like their son, who died many years ago in an accident. Thanks to their help, 3 days ago, David finally remembered everything he knew before the accident and hurried to his hometown, lost in northern Pennsylvania. At first, Kate couldn't believe her husband's story. It sounded so strange and shocking that many of David's acquaintances considered his return to be a true miracle. Meanwhile, the story convinced Kate that her husband had some kind of a guardian angel who protected him in the moment of mortal danger. No one can say for sure if that's actually true, but the couple is sure of one thing: they will never part and test their feelings again. After all, the most important thing in life isn't money, but sincere feelings and true love.